Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and of course, all of you, the great and brilliant and exciting co hosts that are here on the channel. Now, thank you very much for being here. Today, we're going to talk a bit, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, our WTF moment. We're going to talk a bit about monsters. And today, I thought we'd have a little fun and talk about monster on monster action. Yeah, get your minds out the gutter. We're not really going to talk about it, well, maybe on that level, but I thought we would talk about some monster on monster action, meaning that uh, divorcing your world of your heroes, your main characters, what do the monsters do amongst themselves? Uh, Here's an example. Let's go back to the classic Keep on the Borderlands, right? And Keep on the Borderlands, there were the caves of chaos. Yourself a village, a little keep, and then you had, of course, your Borderlands where you had the caves of chaos, and in the caves of chaos, a beginning module B1 or B2, I can't remember exactly. We had various caves, and of course, the caves corresponded to their difficulties. The higher the level cave you went in, the greater the difficulty. And you had your caves of kobolds, caves of goblins, caves of orcs, and whatnot. And it was an introductory adventure for your main characters. And as most villages do, with the goodly humans and humanoids that live nearby, they complain about incursions from the beasts that are out there in the wild. But why is it only the human and humanoid lands that get attacked by these things? Like, well, if they're just hobgoblins living out in the wild, wouldn't they then also be attacked by these wild incursions of said beasts or monsters? What about giants? Do giants have the same problems that humanity does when it comes to dragons flying overhead or the local necromancer raising dead bodies or something? And I thought we would talk about, have some fun with this. And listen, I know you guys are, the majority of you guys are seasoned dungeon masters, and in many ways, when you're creating your world, not even your adventure but your world, you think about these things, right? Like, for example, if there is a an evil necromancer's power growing in the east, you would think about that necromancer maybe raising the dead bodies of not just humans and elves and dwarves, but maybe raising the dead bodies of mindless beasts and giants and dragons and such. I mean, that's where the fabled Draco Lich comes from, right? So, wonder what. Yeah, like Deadman says, yeah, bugbears often will attack other monstrous races like orcs or goblins. Exactly, and but we don't often think. Yes, our main characters are usually the focus of the attention, which it should be, right? They're the ones that come in. They're the wild card. They are the main focus. They're the ones who should be solving the problem. And usually they solve the problem because they are victims of or intrude on the machinations of our big bad evil guy, right? And when our BBEG is doing their functions, or at least making mistakes in trying to take over the world or whatever plot that you have set up, our heroes normally get involved. But a great catalyst is to have our monster on monster action happen, and then the players have to come in and then solve that situation simply by virtue of something getting out of hand that had nothing to do with them. I'm going to bring up a couple of monsters that actually make a lot of sense in this. So let's move away slightly away from the necromancer. Let's talk about there are monsters that create other monsters. I bring shadows and whites as an example. So, in fifth edition and many other games, when you're killed by a shadow, you become another shadow. What if shadows are a shadow beast or clutch of shadow beasts have been attacking, you know, orc raiders and hobgoblin armies and other other being drow that are down in the Underdark and being attacked and converted into shadows. That sounds like a panic situation. And that might be a perfect reason why maybe your proverbial local village is being attacked by orc raiders, right? Their people are being attacked, they're being moved out of their lands. And oftentimes that catalyst, that thing where normally a community might be in have stability, it might even have peaceful relationships with your classic goblinoids over in the other side of the valley, but now something's happened to them, some kind of incursion. Maybe they blame the elves that they had a peaceful relationship with, or they believe that their friendly relationship with the humans and humanoids maybe is being punished, and this is their punishment for it, or something of that nature. And also, it's a great way to introduce the classic, oh, goblinoids bad, PC's good, and then come to find out, wait a minute, they really weren't evil. They were just scared or hungry or in pain or cursed or something of that nature. Also, this gives us an opportunity to, kind of reflavor some of those things. Like when it comes to necromancers, let's be honest, we normally think of undead as humans, but why wouldn't there be undead that are other forms of other, you know, beasts and monsters and racial types? In fifth edition book, again, we have skeletons and we've got like a minotaur skeleton. Well, the only way to make a minotaur skeleton is you have to have a dead minotaur, and then you have to have someone reanimate that skeleton. Hey there, what's going on in there? Fantastic Dimensions, guys. Please, 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 if you want to see some excellent horror actual plays, you got to go over to Fantastic Dimensions. By the way, there. Side note, I'm thinking of doing a creators conclave roundup, like once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, of creators that are putting out material that I think you guys should be part of. If you guys love Call of Cthulhu, you gotta you gotta find Grindhouse and all the period pieces by Ian and Alex. You gotta see it. It's fun. I sarcastically made a comment like, well, I'm surprised somebody hasn't done this before. Well, I'm glad somebody is. So good for you guys. Uh, mm, mm, mm. What's up there? Some fantastic dimensions. Ian says, I could make a Minotaur skeleton without a dead Minotaur, but it will require a sacrifice of a loved one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't need to find a skeleton of a Minotaur to make one, I suppose. But it would be cool. Um, yeah, or a creepy ritual involving a bull and a human. Exactly. I mean, the origins of these things as well, and also when it comes to like monster on monster uh, encounters, I think sometimes we think of the monsters as being hyper focused on the humans in the region, right? As opposed to having monsters, because we could talk about monsters' origins at a different time, which you don't need to follow by whatever very basic Dungeons and Dragons origins that are there. A ritual with a human and a bull, which we've seen in mythology, um, is a possibility to make a minotaur in the first place. Although you could also make the case that why wouldn't if minotaurs exist not as a singular creature but as a race of beings, why wouldn't they have their own adventurers running around in the world and encountering their own dragons and necromancers and oozes and aberrants and giants and that kind of thing, right? I mean, I wouldn't want to be. I really wouldn't want to be a an army of minotaurs going up against, I don't know, a cadre of frost giants and then being caught in the middle. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Listen, there's a special section on OnlyFans just for this kind of stuff. No, 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 no. We're not going there. We're not going to get to that point. But But I also, with monster on monster action, it is a great way to tell a story of your world, a setting. Um, what is it? Show don't tell, right? But we're tabletop role players. So how do you show don't tell when you actually have to tell a thing? Well, you can describe a thing happening in your world by it first happening to other monstrous things in your world, and then the PCs get involved. Like, for example, let's say there's oozes or plants that are growing out of control in your world, and you want the players to be involved in it. Well, if you need to explain to your players how dangerous it is, have those things happen to some of your great monsters. Like, for example, um, you know, a diseased or a dinosaur that's got battle wounds on it or something comes running out of the woods, and then you see other dinosaurs after it, and it falls over dead, and suddenly it gets a chest burster, and a strange ooze starts pouring out of its body. Yeah. Um, yeah, like Mike said. Yeah, I mean, once something like that happens, then you go, oh, PCs are like, well, I don't like oozes, and it's also killing things that are like 5 times my size. I think we're going to be in trouble, right? And so that's a great way. Yeah, like Mike says, in an organic world, there's zero reasons why monsters wouldn't encounter each other. And I'm not saying that every monster needs to be in conflict with each other, but it does mean they would have interactions with each other. And if it's not conflict, it could be monsters using other monsters as allies. It could be a temporary alliance. It could be trading if they're intelligent, whatnot. Humanoid races will use other monsters as mounts, pets, guardians, hunters, food sources, and things like that. So when those ankhegs start attacking the local villagers, and they're like, "I bet the orcs sent them after us," and the orcs are like, "No, we hate ankhegs just as much as you do. Maybe we can work together." What was it? The An episode of The Mandalorian kind of proved that this point, right? Where, oh, it's the evil sand people, and it's just like, no, look, we got a crate dragon over there. We don't like them either. And then the Mandalorians got to work together with the I don't know what we call them, Tatooineite uh, colonists or something, and the Sand People, and then work together to get the crate dragon out of its little cave. And it goes to show, like, yeah, we may not like each other, but we've got a bigger issue here, and maybe it's just because we just we don't speak sand person or whatever it is. Mike says, on a small scale, an encounter in nature might well be a fight between, say, an ogre and a pack of giant hyenas. Exactly. Exactly. Ogre ogre somehow kills a deer. Hyenas are like, yeah, we want to eat too. Ogre tries to fight off hyenas. PCs come along and they hear a lot of commotion, and they're like, who do we defend the ogre? Maybe the ogre really doesn't particularly want to share its meal with anyone. And then the hyenas are like, oh, well, the ogre's pretty powerful. We don't want to go after him, but there's some small PCs. Let's go after it, etc. Yeah, you will not eat my sheep. Sheep, stay away from my sheep. Mike says it's also a great way to set up a major encounter later on. Exactly. Exactly. Going back to that ogre, imagine it's a war band of ogres who are ravaging a village. A red dragon then flies in and roasts the lot. Exactly. They don't, every monstrous beast doesn't need to be allied together against the player characters. Now, we have seen that before, right? Starts out with goblins and then hobgoblins, and then you get some giants, and they're all in league with a dragon or something like that, and we do the classic, higher level stepped encounters. But who's to say that, like, a band of ogres is like, we don't like that red dragon, and shit, we're trying to figure out how not to serve him, or we're trying to hide out from the red dragon just like you guys, right? Michael says, now the players know they're not only in an area where giants exist, but that there's a red dragon in the area and it claims this territory. Exactly. And listen, old school gaming, I understand maybe this isn't a common thing amongst fifth edition, but old school gaming, oh hells yes, you wanted to talk your way out of situations, or at least not talk your way out, but assess the environment and the people you come or monstrous things you're coming in contact with, because you knew that if you fought everything you would die. Now today, for the most part in gaming, it kind of has blended with video gaming in the sense of you normally don't encounter things that, or it's a design mechanism where player characters don't encounter things that they can't have equal conflict with. And in a sandbox world, that may not be the case. And so in the OSR, the just generalized OSR kind of thing, hey, you might find encounter creatures you could very easily encounter at first level, and then find things that could easily eat you at 17th level, and your characters are only 5th level at the time, and you're navigating through this world. So, sitting back and hiding and assessing and talking and uncovering, what's going on. When a player character comes upon a dead monster, it's not like, oh, just loot the body. It's like, well, what killed it? Because it's 5 times our size, and we know this thing is powerful. What's going on? Also, when it comes to your world, this is a great way to info dump on your player characters, right? Like the great migration of the boulets, the land sharks, might happen in your world over and over again, and this just happens to be the great solstice in the migration or something like that. And maybe there's plenty of other monstrous races that are out there that are like, it's the migration of the boulets. Let's all, I don't know, let's say there's like a broken broken steplands or desert or something like that, or great plains, and there's very few places to hide to get to high ground, while the boulets are uh, they're burrowing through the land like diving dolphins or sharks or something like that, and all the monstrous races are like getting to the high ground, and the PCs have to navigate, and they're just like, why are you up here? And they're looking at you, why are you up here? And they're like, yeah, we don't want to be eaten by boulets. And the PCs are like, oh, I didn't realize they ate you. And so, that going back to the ogre being attacked by the hyenas, what a great way to introduce something like that in your world. Great. A, there's ogres. B, the PCs find out there's hyenas, and then you find out that the two don't get along. The hyenas might be a problem that exists everywhere. I remember I brought this up before when I first started role playing, and we had a clutch of goblins that would steal things, petty things, but they'd steal things from everybody, player characters, NPCs, monsters, and the goblins weren't dangerous, but they were thieves. And every time the player characters got involved in some kind of situation, these goblins would be hanging around the periphery, getting ready to steal stuff. And there was a time when the player character, and mind you, it became a running joke because other of my friends and stuff would use the same goblins and to create like little wild things happening in the background. And there was a time when the player characters were fighting, I can't remember, some evil bandit group or something, and the goblins stole something from them, and the bandits were like, listen, we could use your help to get this back. And it became, I think it was a decanter of endless water or something like that, and they had to get it back. And the goblins were they didn't know how to operate it yet, and they were like, we got to get it back before the goblins turn this damn thing on and leave it on. And it became a kind of a running joke, but it was fun. Mike says, I can remember running an encounter where the players stumbled into a fight between a hadrosaur and a pack of velociraptors that turned into a chase sequence. Ooh, yeah. I mean, let's remember, the basics of living happen in worlds. Things need to eat, things need to find shelter. Um, Animals and beasts move from one place to another. Some are just patrolling their territories. Heck, you could even have the classic necromancer or lich or dragon or something like that. Maybe this is the beginning of their career. Like before the red dragon assembles an army, maybe the red dragon's like, maybe I should start recruiting some beings. Oh, fly, fly, fly. Oh, there's some ogres. Let me try to convince them, And ogres are like, what the hell? And red dragon's like, I need to talk to you for a minute. I'm assembling an army and I need you to work for me. And I can also kill you, So maybe we can start. Mike says Thol currently has a hobgoblin, the Red Sun Khanate, versus orcs, the Iron League War. The best part, I have players who have connections to both sides. That's awesome. Now that is awesome because that always creates conflict. Like, who are you loyal to? And their PCs are like, "Oh shit, who do I pick?" Right? Yeah, Deadman's like, I usually use kobold thieves in my campaigns. Yep, goblins and kobolds make great thieves, and of course, again with the this monster on monster action, like let's say the kobolds in the world that are the thieves, maybe you can work with them. Maybe the player characters are like, listen, I know you keep stealing our stuff, but maybe they have a piece of merchandise that they stole from some other big bad, right? A lieutenant or something. And it's like, ooh, maybe we can make a trade or point you could point one monster at another monster to get them off your back, right? The player character that thinks of, ooh, hyenas like the smell of certain type of blood, and then they spill that blood on their enemy to send the hyenas after them or something like that, right? And like, I mean, there's plenty of ways to get one monstrous race or creatures or something or beast to attack another one and let them go at each other. Now, uh, as a dungeon master, be careful of talking to yourself. Like having one NPC talk to the other NPC and you're kind of talking to yourself. Be careful of that. You can kind of like hand wave it and just describe what the interaction is, but I wouldn't act out the whole thing. Don't do that. You can get caught. You can get caught in a very strange verbal loop when it comes to things like that. Yeah. Yeah, a kobold thieves guild in the city sewer who have a massive hoard of spoons, left socks, no right socks, just left socks and doorknobs. Yeah, God, where's my other sock? Kobolds are like, yo, we're gonna charge top dollar for these. Although it would be pretty funny, like the kobold thieves guild is like, I've got better socks than you do. And unfortunately the kobolds are like, yes, they'll come up with washers and dryers, but we will still hold true. We will steal left socks. Michael says the horde animates like the trash heap in Fraggle Rock. Oh no, oh no, it's the birth of the shambling mound. Yeah, exactly. Now there's also when it comes to monster on monster action, there are listen, there's some monsters in the game world that are basically dangerous to everything. I brought up shadows. Another monster is the white, right? The wraith and white, where it's an undead monster that when it kills you, you reanimate and you become part of its league. It's part of its entourage. I think whites and wraiths make great um, distant proverbial monsters that, if left to their own devices, can grow and become a problem. An example would be that instead of a wraith or a white being like a big bad, a wraith or whites could be a terrible army that's coming after the PCs. After the PCs have already encountered something. So, for an example, would be PCs encounter I don't know, a cadre of ogres out in the woods that maybe they're being attacked by hyenas. PCs defeat them. Maybe some of the ogres run off. PCs move on. Later on, PCs find undead wraith or white like ogres, and then the PCs are like, "What the hell?" And then they start coming after the PCs, and then you realize that the wraith is assembling its own band of undead from the debris, the leftover of the player characters, and maybe they do have, three undead ogres and an undead minotaur and five undead goblins and whatnot, and just come, and like wraiths and whites in Dungeons and Dragons are pretty intelligent too. So this could be like a bounty hunter that's assembling them, and then maybe even maybe even as a side note, killing them afterwards, or maybe they have a limited lifespan, or maybe this is a horror that's starting to spread because of a curse or something like that, right? So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Mike says the kobold mentality shatters when they realize that socks are universal. They have no left and right. I wouldn't want to explain that to them though, because could you imagine a player character like the kobolds like try to sneak into the camp and they ignore all the magic items, all the like good stuff, the gold and everything, and they're trying to steal the left sock off of a player character, and the player character just like wakes up and starts looking at him like, "What are you doing?" Like, "We're trying to steal your sock," and the PC takes the sock off and is like, "Hold on for a minute," and then puts it on their other foot, and they're like, mind blown, like, "What the?" Yes, my left sock is really my right sock. No, falling to their knees with the music and the slow motion and the rain falling as like tears. Yeah, what a Deadbear's like the Trubbish, a Pokemon that is animated trash. You know there's lots of monsters that make great aftermath monsters, um, like trash monsters, ooze monsters, plants make great aftermath monsters, like player characters, monsters, whatever, get into some kind of thing, and then they leave their machinations, leave things in the background that grow to become something else. Those are great too, especially if you really want to make the player characters the focus of the story. That pyromancer that leaves fire elementals in their wake after weeks, right? Later on, like, oh, there was just a small ember of fire, and suddenly it grows into a fire elemental that specifically, like, calls out the player character's name, and it's like, I will return back to my home. You summoned me, or whatever, something like that. The player's like, huh? I did that? Mike Gould says heavily wounded or near death humanoid monsters would be a great resource for wights and wraiths. Absolutely. Yeah. And I now, mind you, shadows and wraiths and wights are the thing that comes off the top of my head. But as monstrous origins, because we can make up any kind of monstrous origin we want, who's to say that there aren't plenty of other things out there as well, right? Whether it is if you want a bigger story where there's some kind of avatar of some kind of godling that's going around recruiting them, or maybe you could do the how many villages have and farmers, commoners have been attacked. Maybe there's a farmer that's like, my family's been killed, I've lost everything, and this farmer just happens to be super charismatic, and it's like going around to the wounded ogres and the scared minotaurs and the thieving bands of kobolds, and the farmer's like, listen, I know you can kill me, and I'm not really scared of you anymore. I don't have anything to lose, but what I can offer you is revenge. And they start getting together, right? And then that red dragon that the PCs want to go kill, maybe this farmer's coming behind them like, yeah, there's a red dragon out there, but we're gonna fail if we don't work together. And then so it becomes this thing where they're like, the farmer teaches the ogres how to get away from the hyenas and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's called a callback, guys. It's in television and comedy. It's called callbacks. Yeah, those kind of things would be awesome. Mike Gould says, the wind howls outside the peasant's shack home. Rain thunders upon the roof. Suddenly, the door swings open in the wind and a figure stands silhouetted by a flash of lightning. She slowly rises. her blade, her blade to point at the wounded and wet goblin huddled by the fire. Athalar, the white blade, demands her price. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, and what a great story for maybe like player characters love to sneak up on campfires of monstrous humanoids around a campfire. Maybe they're talking about legends about the ghostly warrior or something like that that's been stealing them and whatnot, and the player characters overhear the orcs talking about it, and they're like, wonder what that's about. I don't know. And then later on, maybe the PCs come across like three undead orcs out in the woods, and the PCs may wrongly assume that the living orcs and the undead orcs are allied together, and they're like, no, they aren't. Or maybe the orcs are like, distraught over one of their, that was my sister that was transformed. I want her back. The orcs are like, we've got to run. We got to get out of here. There's a village. Great, let's go. And they hide in a barn or something like. I mean, there's so many different ways you can incorporate that without the proverbial. We're goblinoids and we want to kill people. They're like, no, we're panicked. Like, we need some help. Yep. Deadman says the Dianoga from Star Wars, a monster that could reach a length of 10 meters. Link in the Discord. Ooh. Let's see if I could bring this up. It's not big enough. Yeah. I see it. Yeah. And listen, talking about Star Wars, there's a ton of monsters in Star Wars that are threats to every other alien race, right? And purple worms are probably pretty damn dangerous to every Underdark monster except the Paul Atreides is the Maldives that can control them, right? So sure, the dwarves might be fighting against the Snurfneblin. I know I mispronounced it, doesn't matter. But in the middle of that conflict, if they make too much noise or vibrations, maybe they fear the purple worms coming into their homes, right? And then, they don't necessarily need to work together, but there might be a bit of that, as the underdark purple worms going around digging through places, and the drow elves have thumpers. They need to send out scouts to distract the purple worms from digging towards their underground havens and whatnot. And when they come across the dwarves doing the same thing, there might be like an unwritten code, there's the maritime law, maybe in the Underdark. They know that, yeah, we don't like each other, but we sure as hell need to get the purple worms away from our homes. So we need to send out small groups to, send out sound or thumpers or something, like from Dune, things that make noise that their tremor sense can sense or something like that. But that's just an example. Mike Gould says her blade. Sorry. Says, wait, did I skip past it? Yeah, okay. Want to freak out players? Have a half-hidden figure slaughter their enemies in full view. Don't totally hide it and don't totally show it. Just give flashes and sounds. Yeah, exactly. What? Well, damn, we could do a week on that one of not telling players what it is, just telling players what they see and feel and experience, right? Like, how does a player know the difference between a wraith, a wight, a zombie, a vampire, a lich, how do you know? You only know from their interactions, and if their interactions are deadly and arcane, and the an arrow pierces through the spine of the orc and falls down as the arrow comes out of its chest to its heart. And then the PCs are like, oh, it's an archer. And then later that orc rises from the ground, its body contorting and whatnot. And, and then you're just like, oh no, it's a necromancer. Well, maybe not, right? Mike Gould says boulets and purple worms are great for this because entire tents can just disappear. Yeah, and you don't know why. Something gets pulled down underground. Well, what was it? I don't know. Are you going to investigate? PCs are like, hell no. Like Mike says from the Huntress, Athalar from above should never be fully seen until the right time. Just show a silhouette, an arm, a rear view of her head, etc., and always in the background. Kind of like okay, in our modern context, it's like wolves, right? You ever now listen? I've never been out in the wild and heard wolves, but classically, and listen, wolves are mundane creatures, right? But you get campers out in the wild and you show that on television in a movie or something, and what do you hear? You hear the sound, you hear them baying far away, you hear that sound, and then Maybe someone sees tracks or bloody footprints or a dead carcass, and the campers, and they're trudging through like the early snow, and they're like, oh shit, are we being tracked by them? Are they sensing us? Did they track this? I mean, mark this area for their territory? And this is just a pack of wolves. If we've got something arcane out there, oh hell's yes, and especially like something like a wraith or a white that's intelligent probably is not going to come up front. Maybe this person might be upwards of a half click away on a hillside, silhouetted by the moon, and that's it. Or I don't know, a shadow seen half seen formed from around a tree. PCs go over there, all they see are footprints, and the person's disappeared. Yeah, yeah, Mike. I'm with you. Yeah, let the player's imagination run wild with what it is. Hell's yes, hell's yes. Just by visually reskinning a chain devil, I had my first ever player character full on retreat through a cornfield. Yeah, hell, just having something. Could you imagine like the player characters find I'm just making an example. Player characters find a band of hobgoblins like shitting their pants, and all you see are like hobgoblins chained and their flesh flayed, chained up in trees, hanging there like trophies, like from the first Predator movie. Spines ripped out, bodies splayed open, and the hobgoblins are like, "Fuck this place," right? And the PCs are like, "What did this? Who strung their bodies up, and who could do that?" Right? And maybe you are using like a chain devil or a wraith or a group of, I don't know. You could come up with a ton of other things, right? And hell, maybe one of the hobgoblins like stumbles towards the party and its eyes glazed over, and the wizard, you tell the wizard in the group, by the way, you notice it casts no shadow, and the wizard's like, it casts no shadow. Oh shit! Oh, hey, get it away from us! Kill it! And the hobgoblin's like, help us, please! And the stumbling ally is just like, wait, come back here. And the wizard is like, we don't want to be here at all. It's casting no shadow. And the PCs are like, what are you talking about, cast no shadow? And then all of a sudden, like, one of another hobgoblin just disappears into the shadows, and they're like, what the hell just happened? And then all of a sudden, the PCs one by one start getting surrounded. I mean, shadows are low CR, but they're dangerous as fuck. Yeah. There it is. Mike says, I promise you, up close, a coyote may look kind of like a dog, but when you see a pack at night, shadows of pointed ears and eyes reflecting the light, it's unsettling. Yeah, I don't ever. What's the movie? Classic. Liam Neeson, The Gray. Great movie, and it's literally just, I don't know. Accident happens. Everyone has to survive. Plane crash, survival in the Arctic wilderness. And oh, by the way, they're just wolves. Uh, Mike Gould says, on the same farm where that devil appeared, the players found two hobgoblins chained to a massive stump. Ooh, one had his legs chopped off. The ogre farmer was eating them a piece at a time. Yeah, I had players. It wasn't anything as gruesome as that. I did have players that bargained with an ogre that was stealing things from a farm, but really all he wanted was just like a couple of pigs or a handful of chickens. One time, a cow stole a barrel of meat and whatnot, and the villagers were like, "We need to kill it," and the ogre was like, "I'm just hungry," and the player's like, "Oh, you could have just said something," and the ogre's like, "Nobody wants to listen to me." And they were like, "Well, we'll teach you. And hey, how about you defend the village, and then they give you food?" And the ogre was like, "Duh, okay." Michael said, "That's how I introduced the female hobgoblin. Oh, NPC to the party. She was the only intact survivor. That's how the whole we come full circle. That's how the whole relationship started." Ah, okay, all right, okay, all right, okay. Mike says the ogre was a farmer who grew corn and raised cockatrices. Cockatrices? Cockatree? Yeah, but see, even that kind of thing, ogres raising cockatrices, using them as pets and food and things like that. I think we miss. I think we miss a little bit of the verisimilitude when we don't see that kind of thing. Like, why wouldn't some of these monsters be raised on a farm or as food or um, being hunting parties? Like, could you imagine, hobgoblins proving their battle prowess by hunting down basilisks or something like that, right? And then you see the PCs come along, statues of hobgoblins, and they're like, oh, that means there's something else out here. Maybe it's a Medusa, maybe it's a cockatrice. And the ogre raising the cockatrices is like trying to find them out there in the wild, and needs the PCs to corral them back again, because we really don't want trees, whatever, cockatry running around randomly, and the ogre's the one that's been corralling them together to keep them from running around in the thing. They were his prized chickens. I love stuff like that. I love stuff like that. I don't know. It's just it's fun. It can be a little bit. You could play tongue in cheek with it, like the ogre and the cockatrices being his prized chickens or something. You could have a lot of fun with that. There's a lot of like internal humor in Dungeons and Dragons as well. Also, listen, you guys know I've talked a lot about having alternate win conditions, right? Everything doesn't have to be fight to the death. Maybe it's just capture the thing, hunt the thing. Um, Solving a problem doesn't necessarily mean killing something. Maybe those hobgoblins are like, we have zero interest in wanting to take over your land. We're traveling from the west to the east. That's all. And the 30 of us are just marching from one place to another. We don't really have any interest in wanting to attack anybody. And the PCs are like, oh, I thought you were a war band. They're like, yeah, because we're going to go to war with people way over there. We human lands, you guys are just in the middle. We didn't ask you to move here. We're going somewhere else. The PC's like, oh, so you just need scouts? Maybe we can scout ahead for you. Yeah, that's all we want. It could be any number of things. Mike says, my very first out of the box encounter I wrote mixed a smuggler pirate ship encounter with cockatrice egg contraband. The eggs hatched, causing havoc, then a ship collision with the PC's vessel. That's always a classic one, right? Like a ship has um, a sailing or flying ship has cargo, and the cargo could be something valuable. It could be monsters locked in cages. It could be any number of things. And then hilarity ensues when problems happen. Storm tossed ship, lightning strike, you know, into the sails of the flying vessel or something like that. And then now you have the situation where the PCs are on, maybe they're, like you said, an out of box encounter where they're on their own ship. They get a collision with another ship. So you have this strange mix of locations, internal and external, the upper decks, the internal, and then you have something running around going after everyone, especially even if there's enemies. So the PCs have a collision with their enemies, but then enemies were carrying something, or maybe they were like thieves or pirates or whatever, and they're like, shit, it got out of the cages, or the eggs hatched, watch out, everybody. And it was trying to avoid their eyes, but fight their enemies, but they run around dangling off the edge of the ships or something. I mean, you could have a lot of fun with that. And I think monster on monster action really can make things, especially if they are monsters that have a very interesting um how do I say this, a very unique interaction with the other monsters. Like, for example, a monster that doesn't have eyes probably doesn't have the same relationship with, say, something that petrifies another monster. So they might not be enemies of each other at all. Like, for example, maybe purple worm incursions bring basilisks, as an example, or cockatrices are known to not only turn things to stone, but they are heralds of disease and whatnot. And so maybe there are other monstrous races out there that are like, listen, everybody, like maybe they are diseased, maybe they're malnutrition or something like that. And the player characters uncover that not only are the bugbears evil, but they're also like there's something wrong with them. Like, what's going on? Why are they attacking the human population or humanoid populations now? And someone figures out, like, oh, because the cockatrices are moving into their land, and the bugbears are willing to work together with you if we could just get them to full health or whatever. And maybe the bugbears do turn on everybody when this is done, or maybe they don't. You know, the blind druids out there protecting the cockatrices from being killed and whatnot because they're just like they're part of nature, and the PCs are like, nah, I don't think that's correct. you know. Um, Also, heck, what is it? Minotaurs are classically in a maze. Maybe there's monsters in the Minotaur's maze. There's all kinds of weird things you play with. Mike says Medusa Grimlock encounters. Yep. For instance, mix the two well. Combine a clay golem and a gelatinous cube for dangerous self-healing encounters. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Medusas and Grimlocks. Yes, like you said, clay golems and gelatinous cubes. What's another one? Ghosts and animated armor are really great. There's one with rust monsters. Well, rust monsters work perfectly well with any kind of tribalistic peoples that don't use any kind of metals at all. They just ride on their backs. Of course, dinosaur riders, pterodactyls, triceratops. Those are really classic ones. What are some other ones? Oozes always really work well with oozes, diseases. Plants work really well with injured. Like they don't need to be allies, but they could work together. Meaning, like PCs come across diseased monster chest bursts, right? Releases ooze outside of itself, and it's like, ooh, ugh. Remember the old? I don't know if you guys remember from. I didn't play nearly enough fourth edition because it really wasn't my bag cup of tea. But there was a something known as the bloodied condition, and in the upcoming advanced fifth edition from Level Up, ENWorld, the, there's the incorporation of the bloodied condition. And that is when a player gets to about half its hit points, there is a transformative element to the monster. In video games, this happens where the PCs maybe attacks a monster, a big bad, boom, boom, boom. It gets to half its health. Suddenly it grows wings or begins breathing fire, or it's enraged with pain and starts knocking pillars down that makes it even more dangerous. And something like that could be used in this concept of monster on monster where, excuse me, like undead let's say skeletons are attacking the PCs, but when or maybe they're zombies or something, maybe they have a little bit of their mindset. And then when they get to about half their level, they perform some kind of action, maybe screaming out in pain or calling forth reinforcements or what have you. The zombies are starting to be killed, and their internal organs and eyeballs and all that kind of stuff starts spilling out, and maybe that becomes much more of a danger. Maybe they're infested by like some kind of hive or something that makes the encounter, gives it another dynamic, and it could be a monster on monster kind of dynamic. I know I'm not being very clear with what I'm saying, but I know what I mean. Mike says rust monsters employed in mines to eat iron ore to free up gems is possible too. Oh yeah, rust monsters that are domesticated, right? Yeah, I could see uh, maybe a random band of dwarves, gnomes, whatever, drow using rust monsters to eat the iron or eat the ore out of the caves to get at something very far more valuable, maybe an aquifer or gemstones or there's plenty of things you can mine underground, salts and oils and like petroleum, things like that are down there. So yeah, absolutely. My Mike says, I'll admit that I never played 4E, but we use the term bloodied at the table to indicate half hit points. And that's exactly what it represented. A bloodied monster was at half hit points, which narratively was an indicator that the PCs are like, oh, we did more than 80 hit points. It's bloodied. That means it has another 80 before it's dead. So it was a narrative visual indicator that we are halfway to the point. Also, bloodied also gave the opportunity to intimidate a monster or creatures or something like, oh, there's 15 hobgoblins. We've killed 8 of them. There's 7 left. They are bloodied because they're at half or less. Now let's do an intimidation check to get them to run away. Or, hey, my wizard cast a spell, took it down to bloodied. Is it ready for a morale check? Or even the dungeon master could go, all right, well, when it gets to the bloodied level, when it gets to half, it's probably the evil lich or the Medusa or the Sphinx or something is going to rethink its position. Do I continue to fight, or do I run, or do I parlay, or something like that? Flesh Golem Will-O-Wisps do the same thing as the Clay Golem Ooze encounter. That's right. Or what is it? Iron Golems and Fire Elementals work pretty good, or what's something else? Iron Golems and um, Mephits, anything fire related, kind of works with that as well. I like that idea too. I never thought of the Flesh Golem Will-O-Wisps, but that's kind of cool. Will-O-Wisps make great monster on monster action kind of stuff too, because Will-O-Wisps love to use other monsters to get them to do things. Yeah. I love that. Fantastic Dimension says better. Bloodied often triggered new behavior in the creature. Yeah, Bloodied often had new behaviors, new statistics. Some of them like and listen, you could bring that back today, like uh giving a monster some kind of rage encounter where when it gets to half its hit points, it now has more attacks, stronger attacks. Maybe it gets an ability to like advantage against mental attacks, right? Because it's so enraged or something like that. It could be, that maybe as a dungeon master, the creature is short for this world. So when it gets to the bloodied, it's like, okay, it's only going to live for 3 rounds, but we're adding 3 extra dice of damage to its power as it starts blasting things out of its eyes or something like that, right? Yep. Like special attacks, special defenses, even movement as well. It could be faster, stronger. Some immunities I could see springing up strangely from the bloodied condition. That kind of stuff. Mm-mm-mm-mm. This can be overwhelming, especially to starting DMs, but if the concept of politics exists in your world, it applies to the monsters as well. Regions where 2 monster territories meet will have similar problems, conflicts, trades, etc. Yeah, yeah. Like Deadman says, the Iron Golem with the Fire Elemental works really well, and it could like combining with just like what Deadman is saying and what Mike is talking about in Fantastic Dimensions. Maybe there's a region where every monstrous race and all the humans have a problem with something. Let's rewind back to something simple. Let's go with Ankhegs, right? The insectoid monsters that spit acid. They usually are in a hive or whatever. Maybe that's a problem for everybody. So when the Ankhegs seasonally start hatching and growing hives or something, it could be that all these disparate regions have conflict with each other, but the conflicts might be like more Cold War rather than hot war, meaning they're not assembling armies against each other. Maybe it's like, yeah, we snipe at each other, but we know there's a period of time where we can't split our resources by sniping at each other and going after the Ankhegs. And there might even be, strangely enough, a black market of sorts of people crossing territories to literally work together to get rid of the Ankhegs, because you need to get rid of the Ankhegs so that we can fight over the other resources, right? And the player characters might need to, or maybe player characters come from different origins. Like my character's a half orc, my character's a dragonborn, my character's a drow, and we all hate eggheads, so we work together, and that's how they've been assembled by a disparate disparate group of people that are like, listen, all you guys need to work together. Go get the eggs, burn down the hives, or smoke out the hives or whatever. Also, the using a far more narrative version of the bloodied condition, you could have in your back pocket, say, 1d6 different things that could happen when the players in an encounter with an enemy, something happens. Meaning, like, let's go with a classic. PC's going along, bandit orcs come out, give me your gold. No, we're not going to give you your gold. Fight ensues. Then when it gets to the halfway point, you roll a d6 and go, boop, oops, anghegs show up and attack everybody, right? You 1d6 things happen. Boom, arrow comes out of nowhere. Here comes the, maybe it's not Atharel, but maybe it's like a wraith comes out of nowhere, and the wraith's minions attack everybody, and the PCs are like, what the hell? Wait, it's not the bandits, it's the wraiths. Like, who are we going after, right? And sure, there's a little bit of that. This can be complicated for new DMs, but there could be a little bit of well, the bandits aren't going to fight to the death. They're probably going to run, but the PCs might get the upper hand. So maybe the bandits are like, hey, maybe we can work together because the damn Wraith's army keeps coming after us, and the Ankhegs are stealing all of our food, and we can't keep running from them. And you have this whole interaction with politics, with exploration, and things like that. So yeah. Uh, mm, mm, mm. I, I love the BFF monsters. Mike says, I tend to give my hags a specialty. Okay. I had one who used insects and insectoid minions. I love hags. One such encounter was her waking an Ankheg hive. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why the hell not? You know, how many evil bastards have always done an experiment on a localized group of individuals, and they don't necessarily have to be a human village. It could be other things. And listen, we don't even have to have human villages being attacked by anybody. Maybe they just have a really great relationship with some other monstrous humanoids that live nearby, and they buy and trade and sell and maybe learn from each other. And then one group gets attacked and they're like, we need allies. And the other group is like, all right, let's get our pitchforks and our torches and pitchforks because we need to go help these other people. Mike Gould says, for those wanting to run an alien game, a massive Ankheg hive is perfect. You know, want predators? Thri-Kreen, which tomorrow this is actually pretty funny. We're going to segue into this from tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to talk about Monster Hunter games. We're going to literally talk about monster hunting and like creating the we're going to talk about the problems with monster hunting, meaning like, could it get a little bit boring? A little bit too monster of the week, not the role-playing game, but like, could it get like, oh, it's another bug hunt, you know, literally, or is it a really great concept for a pickup game? Like, oh, we're going to be monster hunters again. Great, we're going to hunt monsters. And what kind of monsters? Is it witch hunting, demon hunting, insect hunting, giant hunters, dragon hunters, right? So you undead hunters, whether it's like mindless undead, skeletons and zombies. Is it vampire hunters? You know, and so we're going to play with monster hunting tomorrow. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for being here. Again, let me know if you think it would be a good idea to do a creators roundup, because I'm thinking of doing like how I do the show now, to do a creators roundup of like what creators are doing out there in the creative sphere, of course, related to, you know, us at the Creators Conclave, like above, those of us in the clave, and how far along we are, what's on our minds and things like that. Like, for example, a new release from Critical Hit for Call of Cthulhu. There's a new Marquise Hardis, Scavengers, new release there. My brain's going wild with a bunch of different things. Um, uh, Joseph Sterling's got a book out for um, shit, my brain. See, now I don't have all my notes in front of me. Anyway, I thought it would be kind of cool to get a bunch of people who are creators, get it together and do like a once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks of what people are doing, how far along is it, show some pictures, um, read some commentary and things like that to keep people posted about some great creators that we all don't know about. So anyway, guys, yep, absolutely, Ride Eternal. Guys, I will see thee tomorrow. And yes, tomorrow we will be talking about monster hunting. Everybody have a great one. I will see